The silent distress call the stars hung like cold, distant candles in the endless black. Captain Veiltor stood on the cracked bridge of the alien flagship. His 4 eyes fixed on the failing shield readouts. Every few seconds, the ship shook. As enemy plasma blasts struck its hull around them, what remained of the proud Zarath fleet drifted like wounded animals, engines sparking, hulls torn apart. Once, they had been one of the strongest fleets in this sector. Now, they were prey. And the predators were closing in. The comms officer's voice trembled. "Captain, our long-range channels are gone. No allies are near enough to help." Veiltor's throat felt tight, his frilled neck flattening with stress. He knew the truth. No one was coming. The nearest friendly world was weeks away, and their pursuers would destroy them within the hour. But deep inside, he wasn't ready to let his people die. "There is one option," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The bridge crew turned to him. Confused, he tapped a claw against the console, opening an old, almost forgotten channel, one that linked to a species they barely understood, one that many in the galaxy warned to avoid humans. The crew erupted in protest, voices sharp and fearful. "Humans are dangerous," one officer hissed. "They fight without rules," another growled. "They are not like us." Captain Veiltor let them speak, his gaze never leaving the tactical map. 3 enemy cruisers were moving in from the starboard flank, cutting off their escape. "They are dangerous," he admitted. "But so are our enemies, and the humans are the only ones close enough to hear us." Silence fell. The kind of silence that came before a decision no one could undo. Veiltor entered the code, the ship's old transmitter sparking weakly. He sent the coordinates, the situation, and nothing more. If humans answered, they would come on their own terms. If they didn't, well, then the Zarath fleet would be just another name added to the long list of the dead. The message vanished into the void. The captain felt the weight of 1,000 years of pride pressing against his chest. Zaretz had never begged for help. From outsiders today, that pride was worth less than the lives of his crew. Minutes dragged by like hours. On the screen, enemy ships grew larger, their weapons charging. The hull groaned under the strain, bulkheads collapsing in distant corridors. Some of the younger crew whispered prayers to the stars. Veiltor remained still, though inside, doubt gnawed at him. Perhaps the humans would ignore them. Perhaps the stories were true, that humans only fought when their own people were in danger. Perhaps he had just sent his final act into nothingness. Then the sensor officer's voice cracked through the tension. "Captain, there's something." Every head turned to the main display. From the shadows beyond the battle, a massive shape slid into view. It was unlike any ship the Zaraths had seen. Black as the void, edges jagged like the teeth of some great beast. The hull shimmered with strange plating, absorbing enemy scans. It moved with a confidence that only came from absolute power. A voice came over the comm, deep and steady. "This is Captain Marcus Hale of the Terran warship Resolute. Your signal was received." Veiltor's breath caught. The human voice was calm, almost casual, as if this battle was nothing more than an inconvenience. "Hold your positions." "Alien fleet," the voice continued. "We'll take it from here." Before anyone could react, the Resolute unleashed its first barrage. Bright streaks of kinetic slugs ripped across space, smashing into enemy cruisers. One exploded instantly, debris scattering into the darkness. The other 2 veered off, shields failing under the relentless human assault. The Zarath crew watched. In stunned silence, they had never seen such brutal, precise firepower for the first time in hours. The enemy's advance faltered. Veiltor felt a flicker of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since the battle began. Hope. The humans had come, but as he stared at the Terran dreadnought tearing through their enemies, he realized something else. The humans hadn't come because they were friends. They had come because they chose to, and that made them even more unpredictable. In the silence between cannon fire, Veiltor whispered to himself, "Stars, help us. We've called wolves to guard our door." The enemy formation began to shift, confusion rippling through their lines. Their captains had not expected another warship to appear, especially not one of such size and unknown design. The Resolute drifted forward with slow, deliberate menace, like a predator studying its prey. Its matte black hull reflected no starlight, as if it had been carved from the darkness itself. Weapons turrets tracked targets with mechanical precision, and strange shield ripples shimmered faintly along its flanks. Every detail screamed of a ship built not just for war, but for dominance, inside the Zareth flagship. Captain Veiltor's crew stared at the human vessel in silence. One young officer muttered, "That is a Terran warship," as if naming it would make it less frightening. Another whispered, "They say humans only build one kind of ship, the kind meant to kill." Veiltor did not correct them, for his own heart was tightening in his chest. He had called for help, yes, but he had not expected this. The Resolute was not a rescuer in the traditional sense. It was a force of nature. Then came the voice again, cutting through the static with a steady calm. "This is Captain Marcus Hale of the Terran warship Resolute. Your signal was received." The tone carried neither arrogance nor reassurance, just a statement of fact. Veiltor answered carefully, "We are grateful for your arrival, human captain." Hale's reply was short. "Gratitude later. Survival now." The channel cut before Veiltor could say another word. What happened next was unlike anything the Zareth crew had seen in all their years of naval service. The Resolute moved, and the void around it seemed to move with it. Its massive cannons rotated in unison, each shot timed to the rhythm of the enemy's maneuvers. The first volley took out 2 enemy frigates in the blink of an eye. The second targeted the engines of a heavy cruiser, leaving it adrift and helpless. There was no wasted fire, no random shots, only cold precision. The enemy commander, realizing the threat, ordered all ships to focus fire on the human vessel. Dozens of plasma beams lanced through the darkness toward the Resolute. Instead of retreating or dodging, the dreadnought pushed forward. Its shields flared bright for a moment, absorbing the blows. Then, with terrifying speed, it counterattacked, striking not at the ships themselves, but at their coordination, communications, relays, sensor arrays, command decks, all destroyed in seconds. Without orders, the enemy fleet began to break formation in the Zareth bridge. The crew's awe was mixed with disbelief. They fight like they've done this 1,000 times before. One officer breathed. Veiltor said nothing, though inside he felt the same. He had heard the old rumors, the whispered tales of humans fighting on death worlds where the air itself wanted you dead. It was said they learned war not as an art, but as a survival instinct. Now, watching the Resolute, he began to think those stories were not exaggerated, but understated. One of his lieutenants approached. "Captain, should we join the fight?" Veiltor's frilled neck flared slightly. "Yes," he said, "but keep our distance. Watch them. Learn from them." For all their pride, the Zareth ships were too damaged to match the humans' ferocity. Better to observe, and perhaps to understand what kind of allies they had just gained. The battle turned quickly from chaos to slaughter for the enemy. The Resolute cut a path straight through their center, guns firing in perfect rhythm. Small attack craft launched from its hangars, darting like wasps to sting at weak points. Each enemy vessel destroyed felt less like a victory and more like a statement. The humans were sending a message. There would be no mercy for those who hunted the weak. Finally, the enemy's remaining ships began to scatter. The Resolute did not chase. Instead, it held position, its guns still tracking. Daring anyone to return, Veiltor could almost feel the human captain's eyes on the battlefield, calculating, deciding. Then the coms crackled again. "Zareth flagship, your situation is stabilized for now. Hale said, but you're not safe yet. If you want to live, you'll follow our lead. The alien crew exchanged uneasy glances to obey. Humans in battle was unheard of, even unthinkable. But the truth was written in the wreckage drifting outside without the Resolute. They would already be dead. Valtor gave the only answer he could. Understood, Captain Hale. The channel cut once more. As the Zareth fleet began to regroup under human guidance, Valtor stood at the viewport watching the Terran dreadnought. There was something unsettling about the way it loomed in the darkness. It was not here for glory or for politics. It was here for the fight, and now, it was their shield, yet. A small voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning. A shield can protect. But it can also turn into a sword, and if the day came when that sword was pointed at the Zareth, there would be no surviving it. The enemy had not been destroyed, only scattered in the dark between the stars. Damaged enemy cruisers limped away, their commanders desperate to regroup on the bridge of the Zareth flagship. Captain Valtor studied the tactical map. The glowing red symbols showed enemy ships still in range, wounded, but not finished. Beside them, the Resolute floated like a silent blade, its massive guns tracking slowly from target to target. Even in stillness, the human warship radiated danger. A sudden burst of comms traffic filled the air. "This is Hale." The human captain's voice came sharp and clipped. "We're not done." The words were simple, but the tone left no doubt. The Resolute was already moving in for another strike. The Zareth fleet tried to keep pace, but their engines were sluggish. Their hulls weakened. The humans didn't slow down. They darted ahead with speed that seemed impossible for such a massive ship. The first enemy vessel they caught was a destroyer, fast. Lightly armored, the Resolute didn't fire immediately. Instead, it changed course suddenly, exposing what looked like its unprotected side. The enemy, thinking they had found an opening, turned toward the human ship at full speed. Only then did the Resolute unleash its trap. Hidden launch ports slid open, releasing a swarm of small guided projectiles. Each one struck the destroyer's engines and weapons in perfect sequence. The ship went dark in seconds, drifting helplessly. The Zareth crew watched in stunned silence. "This isn't a rescue mission," one officer whispered. "This is a hunt." Valtor said nothing, though the truth was plain. The humans didn't fight like other fleets. Zareth war doctrine relied on heavy formations and steady exchanges of fire. The humans, they fought like predators. They used feints, speed, and ruthless precision to control the battle. Every move was meant to break the enemy's mind before their ship. The second enemy target was a cruiser hiding in the shadow of an asteroid cluster. Most commanders would have avoided the dense field of rock, too risky for navigation, but the Resolute went in without hesitation. Its hull brushed dangerously close to jagged stone as its weapons fired in tight bursts. The cruiser tried to retreat deeper into the cluster. That was when the human ship used its thrusters in short, violent bursts, ricocheting between rocks in a maneuver that no Zareth vessel could survive. Within moments, the cruiser's bridge was gone, vaporized in a single precise shot when the Resolute emerged from the asteroid field. Its hull bore fresh scorch marks and shallow dents, but the way it moved, it was as if it had been playing a game. Valtor finally spoke. "They don't fear damage." His second-in-command nodded slowly. "They treat the ship like a weapon they can throw." That idea unsettled the entire bridge crew. Zareth ships were built to be preserved, protected, and maintained. Humans seemed willing to risk theirs in ways that defied all reason. The comms came alive again. "Zareth fleet, you're too slow for the chase," Hale said bluntly. "Hold position. Repair what you can. We'll clear the path ahead." The order stung, but it was the truth. If the aliens tried to keep up, they'd only slow the humans down. Veiltor gave the command to comply. They would follow. And watch, over the next 2 hours. The Zereth fleet tracked the Resolute's movements from a distance on the tactical map. It was like watching a lone predator dismantle a herd. The humans never charged blindly, never wasted fire. They struck. Where it hurt most: command ships, supply vessels, coordination hubs. Every kill made the remaining enemy ships less organized, less willing to fight. Then came the strangest move of all. The Resolute allowed a small group of enemy corvettes to approach. The Zereth crew tensed, certain this was a mistake, but the human ship fired only weak bursts. As if struggling, the corvettes closed in for the kill at the last moment. The Resolute's main batteries lit up. The corvettes were too close to dodge. All 4 were shredded instantly. The Zareth Comes officer muttered under his breath. They pretend to be weak, so the enemy gets close enough to die. Veiltor leaned back in his command chair, his frilled neck curling slightly in thought. Such tactics would be considered dishonorable in Zereth's culture. But here, in the cold dark, honor had no meaning. If you were dead, perhaps the humans understood something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. When the Resolute finally returned to formation, its hull still smoked from battle heat. Captain Hale's voice came again, steady as before. The way ahead is clear. For now, it wasn't a promise of safety. It was a reminder that survival was never guaranteed, not in war, not in space. And as the humans took point once more, the Zereth fleet followed, their pride shaken. Their understanding of war forever changed. The debris field drifted silently, broken ships turning slowly in. The void, here and there, fires still burned inside shattered hulls, glowing faintly like dying embers. The Zereth fleet floated in the shadow of the human dreadnought. Repairs had begun, but their damage was too deep. Engineers worked with trembling hands, patching holes and sealing air leaks. Every clang of metal was a reminder that without the humans, none of them would be alive. On the bridge of the Zareth flagship, Captain Veiltor watched the Resolute on the main screen. It sat motionless for now, but its dark hull seemed alive. Ready to move at any moment, he knew they owed the humans their lives. But survival always had a cost, and Hale, the human captain, was about to name it. The Comes crackled to life. Captain Veiltor. Hale's voice came steady and controlled. Your fleet is not safe yet. Veiltor straightened. We are prepared to follow your lead in battle. That's not enough, Hale replied. From this moment until we get you out of enemy space, you will follow all my commands, combat, and navigation. The Zereth bridge went still. One officer hissed, he wants control of the fleet. Another muttered, we'll be slaves in all but name. Veiltor ignored them, his eyes fixed on the screen. Why? He asked simply, because Hale said, I can't protect you if you're making decisions that get in the way of survival, yours or mine. The words carried no threat, only certainty. The kind of certainty that came from someone who had already calculated the outcome. Veiltor knew he could refuse, but refusal would mean facing the enemy without the Resolute. And that was not survival. That was suicide. He gave the answer, slow but firm. Very well. Captain Hale, until we are safe, you have our command. Some of his officers shifted uncomfortably. One even whispered, you dishonor our people. But Veiltor ignored them. There would be time for pride later, if they lived. The Resolute wasted no time. Within minutes, human repair drones zipped between the alien ships. Their designs were strange, small, insect-like machines that clung to hulls and welded plates faster than Zereth engineers could dream of. The humans also sent over supply pods filled with emergency rations and medical gear. It was a strange mix, mercy delivered by warriors who had just torn through enemy ships like predators. As work continued, Hale called for a private channel. Veiltor accepted. On the screen, the human captain appeared. Dark uniform. Calm eyes that seemed to measure everything. "I need to know how much fight you have left," Hale said without introduction. "Half our ships can move, fewer can fire." Veiltor admitted, "Our ammunition is low, and our shields are unstable." Hale nodded once. "Then we'll fight smart. I'll use your fleet to draw them where I want them, and my ship will finish the job." Veiltor's frilled neck tensed. "You mean to use us as bait?" "Yes," Hale said, "but I don't." "Waste bait, I protect it." The blunt honesty caught Veiltor off guard. Most commanders would have wrapped such a plan in grand speeches. The humans spoke as if discussing the weather. There was no arrogance, only focus. Perhaps that was why he was dangerous. He didn't seem to fight for pride or for vengeance. He fought to win. When the private channel ended, Veiltor turned to his crew, "Prepare for coordinated maneuvers." He ordered. Some hesitated, clearly unhappy about taking orders from humans. But when they looked at the Resolute, they said nothing. Fear had a way of silencing rebellion. Hours later, the fleet began to move. The humans had charted a course toward a nebula on the far edge of the sector. Its gases were unstable, its storms unpredictable. No sane fleet would go near it, which made it the perfect place for a trap. The Resolute took point, its engines glowing like twin suns. The Zareth ships followed in formation, though many limped forward with uneven thrust in the silence of the bridge. Veiltor studied the human ship ahead. It wasn't just a vessel. It was a statement. Every line of its design spoke of a species that saw war as part of life. He wondered what the humans wanted in return for this rescue. No one gave such help without expecting something back. And if the cost wasn't paid in credits or resources, it might be paid in something far greater as the nebula grew closer. The sensors picked up movement behind them. The enemy had taken the bait. Veiltor's crew tensed. Hale's voice came over the calm and cold. "Stay in formation, whatever happens. Keep moving forward." And in that moment, Veiltor understood the truth. They had given control to the humans, and now their survival or their destruction would depend entirely on the Resolute. The nebula loomed ahead, a swirling wall of gas and lightning. It pulsed with deep reds and ghostly blues. Each cloud lit from within by silent storms. The edges twisted like living things, curling and stretching across the void. Most captains would have turned away at first sight. To Veiltor, it looked like the mouth of some ancient beast. To the humans, it was an opportunity. Entering the storm in 2 minutes, came Captain Hale's voice over the comm. The Resolute led the formation without hesitation. Its black hull seemed to drink in the strange light. Behind it, the Zarvith ships followed in a tight column. Some shook under the stress of their damaged engines, but none broke formation. Enemy signatures glowed faintly on the rear sensors, closing fast. The first tendrils of the nebula swallowed them. The stars outside vanished, replaced by a shifting haze. Electric arcs danced between drifting clouds. Sensors crackled with static. The void felt smaller here. More dangerous, perfect hunting. Ground Hale's voice came through, as calm as ever. The Resolute suddenly banked left, sliding into a thick pocket of red gas. Its silhouette melted into the haze. Within seconds, it was gone from Zareth sensors. Veiltor's bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. "We've lost them," someone said. "No." Veiltor replied, his voice low. "We are bait now." The enemy fleet entered the nebula moments later. Their ships spread out, weapons glowing. Faintly in the stormlit clouds, they thought the Zareths were alone. They thought the humans had abandoned them. That was when the trap snapped shut from the haze above. The Resolute emerged without warning. Its main guns lit up the clouds, turning red gas into a burning sea. The first enemy cruiser vanished in a single blast. Fragments spun away into the storm before the others could react. Swarms of human strike craft streaked out from hidden launch bays. They moved like hunters in a reef, weaving between lightning arcs. Their weapons targeted weak points with surgical precision. The Zareth fleet could only watch. Human ships darted in and out of the gas, firing and disappearing before return fire could land. Enemy sensors struggled to track them through the interference. Panic rippled through the hostile formation. Some ships fired blindly into the clouds, hitting only empty space. Valtor's comms officer gasped. They're using the nebula-like camouflage. The captain nodded slowly. It wasn't just camouflage. It was a battlefield the humans had shaped to their will. Every lightning flash hid their movement. Every gas cloud masked their approach. Hale's voice cut in. Zareth's fleet, break formation and drift. Make yourselves look helpless. It was a dangerous order, but Valtor obeyed without hesitation. His ships slowed. Power signatures dimming as if their engines were failing. The enemy saw weakness and moved in closer. Closer than they should have. That was when the Resolute struck again, its forward cannons fired in a perfect cross pattern. Hitting 3 enemy ships at once, the blasts ignited pockets of unstable gas. A chain of explosions rolled through the nebula. Enemy vessels were tossed like leaves in a storm. Some vanished entirely into fire and smoke. Through the chaos, the Resolute kept moving. It never stayed in one place long enough to be targeted. Its smaller ships herded the enemy toward the most dangerous parts of the nebula. Lightning storms ripped through unshielded hulls. Plasma surges overloaded weapon systems. Every second inside this trap was a death sentence for the enemy. Still, the fight was not without risk. One human strike craft took a hit and spiraled into a gas pocket. It exploded silently, the fire swallowed by the clouds. Valtor felt a strange twist in his chest. Even the humans, with all their precision, could bleed here. The battle raged for what felt like hours. When the last enemy ship tried to flee, the Resolute let it go. Hale's voice returned to the comm. "Leave them," he said. "One survivor will tell the others what happened here." The message was clear. This was not just a victory, it was a warning. As the human fleet regrouped with the Zareths, the nebula began to fade behind them. The storm's glow dimmed, replaced by the cold light of open space. The wreckage of the enemy drifted silently inside. No one pursued, no one dared, on the Zar flagship. The crew was quiet. They had survived the impossible, but they knew it was not their own skill that had saved them. It was the humans, and now they were bound to follow wherever the Resolute led. Valtor looked at the distant shape of the Terran warship. In that moment, he understood something new about these humans. They didn't just win battles, they reshaped them, and in doing so, they reshaped the very fear of their enemies. The nebula was behind them now, its storms fading into distant flashes of light. But ahead lay another challenge, the enemies. Second wave, larger and better organized. They had been waiting beyond the nebula's reach, confident the trap would fail now. They surged forward in formation, blocking the path to safety. Their ships were newer, faster, and armed with weapons the Zareth fleet had never seen before. Even the humans had slowed their advance, reading the battlefield carefully. Valtor stood on his bridge, staring at the tactical map. His ships were battered, shields weakened, and ammunition running low. Every logical part of his mind told him this fight was impossible. Yet, at the front of the formation, the Resolute didn't slow. It moved like a predator scenting blood, and for reasons Valtor couldn't explain, he felt his own fear begin to fade. The human captain's voice came over the comm, sharp and focused. "All ships, prepare for coordinated strike." Valtor replied, "Our strength is limited." "Then make every shot count," Hale answered. "We'll break them together." The enemy opened fire first. Long-range beams of green light lanced toward the Allied fleet. The Resolute's shields flared, taking the brunt of the impact. Then came the human reply. Not beams, but solid kinetic rounds moving at impossible speeds. They smashed into enemy shields, each impact sending shockwaves through their formations. Several ships veered off immediately. Stunned by the force, the Zereth fleet joined in, their weaker guns focusing on enemy vessels already damaged by the humans. One by one, the enemy's outer ships began to fall. But they pressed harder, closing the distance. When they reached mid-range, the fight turned savage. Human strike craft launched in tight formations. They weaved between enemy fire like dancers in a storm. Zereth pilots followed their lead, clumsy at first, but quickly adapting to the unpredictable maneuvers. Together, they tore into the enemy's flanks for the first time. Zereth and human voices shared the same victory shouts over the comm. The enemy's flagship loomed at the center of the fight, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. Its key? Commander sent wave after wave of fire toward the Resolute. The human ship didn't flinch. Instead, it surged forward alone, drawing all attention to itself. Cover their advance, Veltor shouted, his fleet moving to shield the Terran dreadnought's vulnerable sides. The Resolute's guns roared. Every shot landed on the flagship's critical systems, engines, weapon banks, and shield generators, the Zareths added. Their firepower, in moments, cracks began to appear along the enemy's hull. Then came the moment that shifted the battle completely. Hale's voice rang out. Target their bridge, now. The Allied guns fired in unison. A single, brilliant explosion lit the darkness as the flagship's command section vanished. The enemy fleet hesitated, their coordination broken. It was all the opening the Allies needed. The humans and Zareths pressed the attack. Enemy ships scattered, some retreating at full speed. Others tried to fight, but without their commander. They fell quickly. Every kill was clean, efficient, and final. The tide of the battle turned fully in their favor on the Zard flagship. The crew's disbelief shifted to something else. Respect. They had seen the humans fight with skill before. But this was something more. It was not just power or technology. It was the will to face impossible odds and make them possible. The last enemy ship exploded in a silent burst of fire. The battlefield fell into quiet. Only drifting wreckage remained. Hale's voice returned. Softer now. Zereth fleet, the path ahead is clear. You're free to return to safe space. Veltor exhaled slowly. He looked around at his crew, tired, injured, but alive. They had survived battles they never could have won on their own. And they had done it by trusting a species they once feared. The Resolute slowed, allowing the Zereth fleet to take formation beside it. For the first time since the distress call, they were not running. They were moving forward together in that moment. Veltor understood something deeper. The humans had not saved them for glory or reward. They had done it because they refused to stand by while others fell. It was a kind of strength the galaxy rarely saw. And it was the kind of strength he would never forget. The wreckage of the battle drifted quietly behind them. Burned metal fragments glinted faintly in the light of a distant sun, here and there. Broken enemy ships tumbled slowly, powerless. The silence after so much violence felt strange, almost unnatural for the Zareth fleet. It was the first true calm they had known in days. Captain Veltor stood at the viewport of his flagship. Ahead, the Resolute led the way, a black shadow against the soft glow of the stars. Every movement of the human dreadnought spoke of controlled power. Not the kind that demanded attention, but the kind that commanded it without a word. The Zareth crew moved with quiet focus, repairing systems, tending to the wounded. But every so often, eyes would drift to the human vessel on the screen. There was no more fear in those glances, only respect. The comms activated. Hale's voice steady as always. Zereth, flagship. We are approaching the edge of contested space, Veltor answered. Our worlds will not forget this. Captain Hale, there was a pause. Then the humans' reply came. Good, but remember, we didn't come for glory. The words were quo. The words were simple, but they struck deep. The humans had risked everything for strangers. And in doing so, they had changed the Zareths forever. An hour later, the Allied fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a neutral station, docking clams. Locked in place, relief spread through the Zareth crews. Medical teams rushed aboard to evacuate the worst of the injured. The station's officials looked in shock at the combined fleet, human and Zareth ships side by side. It was a sight the galaxy rarely saw inside the station's main hall. The two captains met face to face for the first time. Valtor was taller by a head, his frilled neck raised in a sign of formal respect. Hale stood with his hands behind his back, posture relaxed but watchful for a moment. They simply regarded each other. Then Valtor spoke. I expected you to demand payment. Perhaps territory. Hell shook his head. What we want can't be bought when the time comes. If humanity calls, you answer. The alien captain studied the human for a long moment. There was no deception in his eyes, no hunger for conquest, only the certainty of someone who knew. The galaxy was dangerous, and that alliances were the only thing that truly lasted. Finally, Valtor extended his clawed hand. We will answer, he said. And not just because we owe you, but because you have proven worthy of trust. The handshake was brief but solid. It's a single gesture that carried the weight of hundreds of lives. Around them, crews from both sides began exchanging greetings. Some traded patches from their uniforms. Others shared drinks. Laughter mixed. With the quiet hum of repair work, in the middle of all that noise, a new bond was forming. Later, as the Resolute prepared to depart, Valtor stood on his bridge and watched it. Part of him felt uneasy, not because of fear, but because of the knowledge that he might never see such a ship again. The human dreadnought was more than metal and guns. It was a symbol of what happened when humanity chose to act, and of the danger to those who stood against them. As the Resolute's engines flared, Hale's voice came over the comm one last time. Remember this day, Captain, because the galaxy will. Then, with a flash of light, the human warship vanished into faster-than-light space. The Zareth fleet was left in the quiet of their own stars, but they knew they were no longer alone in the galaxy. News of the battle spread quickly across neutral worlds. Merchants whispered of the human dreadnought that had cut an enemy fleet to pieces. Among the enemy's ranks, the story became a warning that in the dark between the stars, if you preyed on the weak, you might call the attention of the Terrans. And if that happened, there would be no escape. In the days that followed, the Zareth Council held an emergency session. For the first time in their history, they voted unanimously to formalize an alliance with humanity. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. The humans were not like the other great powers. They didn't conquer for resources or enslave for labor. They fought because they refused to let others be destroyed. On his private log, Valtor recorded a single entry. Today, the Zareth learned that strength is not only in numbers or weapons. It is in the will to stand between danger and those who cannot stand for themselves. The humans have that will, and now so do we, somewhere far from Zareth space. The Resolute traveled toward its next mission. Its crew didn't know their names were now spoken with respect in alien halls. They didn't need to know, because for them, it had been just another day, another fight. They could not walk away from, and somewhere in the galaxy, another ally waited, one who would answer if humanity ever called.